My name is Oliver Blake, and I've always prided myself on cracking the toughest cases. But nothing prepared me for what I was about to face. This is my story, one that I still struggle to believe. It began on a damp, fog-laden evening. The city's heart was eerily silent as I approached the latest crime scene, a narrow cobblestone alleyway, hidden away like a forgotten secret. The scene was illuminated by the harsh glow of police floodlights, casting long, haunting shadows. The victim, a middle-aged woman named Clara, was seated against the damp wall. Her body was unnaturally rigid. Her skin had an ashen, stone-like quality. But it was her face that chilled me to the bone. Twisted in an eternal scream of terror, her eyes wide open, staring into a void only she could see. Around her neck hung a crumpled piece of paper, bearing the phrase that had become a chilling signature: "The Basilisk sees all." I had seen it at each of the bizarre cases I'd been called to in recent weeks. Victims found in a state of petrification, each with the same cryptic message. It defied logic, defied science, and it haunted my every thought. I was lost in my observations when Detective Lisa Carter, my partner, joined me. "Another one, Oliver?" she asked, her voice a mixture of concern and disbelief. Lisa was a seasoned detective, her instinct sharp, and her skepticism a counterbalance to my sometimes overly analytical approach. As we cordoned off the scene, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The night was unusually quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Each victim's petrified state suggested something unnatural at play, something that lurked in the shadows of myth. Driven by a need to find answers, I spent that night poring over old texts and online forums, delving into the myth of the Basilisk, a creature from legends that could turn anyone to stone with its gaze. It was a tale I remembered from childhood, a fantastical story that now seemed disturbingly relevant. The following day, I revisited the crime scenes, searching for any overlooked clue, any link that might explain the impossible. But the answers remained elusive, hidden within the cryptic message left with each victim. I knew that to solve this mystery, I would have to venture into uncharted territory, to explore theories that defied conventional thinking. And as the city succumbed to fear, I braced myself for a journey into the unknown, into a world where myth and reality collided. I began the following day at the city's central library, its ancient archives a tome of forgotten knowledge. Here, amidst dusty shelves and the musty scent of old books, I hoped to find a clue, any shred of evidence to explain the impossible phenomena plaguing the city. Hours passed, with each page turned offering more lore about the Basilisk, a creature of nightmares, a serpent or dragon whose very gaze could render flesh to stone. The more I read, the deeper I sank into a world where myth blurred into reality. But it was a small footnote in an archaic manuscript that caught my eye, a mention of an ancient artifact, rumored to summon and control the Basilisk. It was a tenuous lead, but it was all I had. As night fell, I found myself in the city's underbelly, where whispered rumors led me to an underground black market, a place where the illicit trade of ancient relics thrived. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and hushed conversations. Shadowy figures moved with purpose, their eyes wary and calculating. It was here, in this den of antiquity and deceit, that I met a contact who claimed knowledge of the artifact. With a mixture of caution and intrigue, I followed him through a maze of makeshift stalls until we reached a secluded corner. There, wrapped in a tattered cloth, lay the object of my quest, an artifact that seemed unremarkable at first glance, yet exuded an aura of latent power. "It's said to control the Basilisk," the contact whispered, his eyes glinting with a mix of greed and fear. "But beware, detective, for such power comes at a grave cost." The artifact was a small, intricately carved amulet, cold to the touch, with symbols that seemed to dance in the flickering light. A shiver ran down my spine as I held it, an instinctive warning that this was something beyond my comprehension. As I left the underground market, the weight of the amulet in my pocket was not just physical, but a burden of responsibility. I knew I was stepping into uncharted territory, where the line between hunter and hunted could easily blur. My next stop was the city's university, where I sought the expertise of Dr. Amanda Shaw, a renowned scholar in mythology. Her office was cluttered with artifacts and ancient texts, the walls lined with sketches of mythical creatures. Dr. Shaw listened intently as I recounted my findings, her expression a mix of academic curiosity and concern. "You must be careful, Detective Blake," she warned after examining the amulet. "This artifact is ancient, powerful, and dangerous. It's part of a lost civilization's attempt to harness forces they barely understood." Her words echoed in my mind as I left her office. The city was asleep, unaware of the shadows that lurked within its heart. And as I walked the empty streets, the amulet in my pocket felt like a ticking bomb, ready to unleash a horror that had been dormant for centuries. That night, as the city lay enveloped in darkness, I sat in my office, the amulet on my desk. I was at a crossroads, torn between the desire to unravel this mystery and the fear of awakening a force that could not be controlled. But fate, it seemed, had already set its course. For that night, under the cold gaze of the moon, a new victim was found, petrified in terror. And it was then that I realized the horror had already been unleashed. I reached out to Dr. Amanda Shaw again, seeking her expertise. Together, we delved into ancient texts and obscure references, trying to piece together the puzzle. Amanda's knowledge of mythology was unparalleled, but even she was cautious, warning me of the dangers of meddling with forces beyond our control. "It's not just a matter of controlling the basilisk, Oliver," she explained one evening, her office dimly lit by a single desk lamp. "This creature, if it indeed exists, is bound by ancient magic, and the amulet is the key. But remember, such power often demands a steep price." Her words weighed heavily on me, but the sight of the city gripped in fear left me with no choice. I needed to use the artifact to summon and control the basilisk, to bring an end to this terror. The first time I used the amulet, it was in the dead of night. I stood in an open field, the city skyline a silhouette against the starlit sky. The air was still, the world holding its breath. As I uttered the incantation Amanda had deciphered, a chill ran through me, and the ground beneath me trembled. From the shadows emerged the basilisk, a creature of nightmares, its scales glistening under the moonlight, its eyes a void of death. Fear gripped me, but the amulet pulsed with power, and the creature hesitated, as if held back by an invisible force. I directed the basilisk away from the city, leading it to the outskirts, where its gaze could harm no one. But with each use of the amulet, I felt a part of me wither away. My nights were plagued with nightmares, and my days were a haze of exhaustion. As the city's panic turned to whispered tales of a shadowy figure controlling a monster, I found myself trapped in a double life. By day, I was Detective Oliver Blake, the man leading the investigation into the petrified victims. By night, I was the keeper of a mythical beast, my life force draining away with each encounter. Amanda noticed the change in me. "You can't continue like this, Oliver," she warned, her eyes filled with concern. "The amulet is consuming you. We need to find another way." But there was no turning back. The basilisk had become a part of me, an extension of my will, yet an embodiment of my deepest fears. I knew the creature needed to be stopped, permanently, and I knew that I was the only one who could do it. As the city slept, I prepared for one final encounter with the basilisk. With Amanda's reluctant help, I set a trap in the tunnels beneath the city, where I first controlled the creature. It was there, in the darkness, that I planned to end this nightmare once and for all. But as I ventured into the tunnels, the amulet pulsing against my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into my own grave. The basilisk, a creature of legend, was my adversary, and the night ahead loomed long and uncertain. The weight of the amulet felt heavier than ever as I descended into the tunnels beneath the city. Each step was a battle against the fatigue that clung to me like a shroud. This was it. The night I would confront the basilisk for the last time. The plan was simple, yet fraught with risk. In these very tunnels beneath the city, where the shadows ran deep, I would confront the basilisk one last time. Dr. Amanda, with her eyes clouded by concern, had reluctantly helped me rig the trap. "Oliver," she had warned, "this might not end the way we hope. Be prepared for anything." Her words, though grim, only strengthened my resolve. Summoning the basilisk felt different this time. As I whispered the ancient incantation, a surge of power ran through me, intertwining with a sense of impending doom. The ground shuddered, and from the darkness emerged the basilisk, its presence more terrifying than ever, its eyes, voids of despair and death, fixed upon me. Yet it was held at bay by the amulet's force. Step by step, I led it deeper into the tunnels, towards the point where the trap was set. The basilisk followed, its massive form a shadow of relentless dread. I could feel its desire to break free, to end this dance of control and submission. As we reached the designated spot, I uttered the final words of power. The ground beneath the basilisk crumbled, sending it into the abyss we had prepared. But fate, it seemed, had one more twist in store. The tunnel began to collapse, and in my attempt to escape, I was struck by falling debris. Pain engulfed me, and I fell to the ground, my vision blurring. In those final moments, I thought of the city above, of the lives that would go on, untouched by the darkness that lurked beneath. And then, there was peace, a surrender to the inevitable. As the dawn broke, the city awoke to a day like any other, oblivious to the sacrifice made in its depths. I, Dr. Amanda Shaw, stood at the entrance to the now sealed tunnels, the weight of loss heavy in my heart. Oliver Blake, a detective who had ventured into the unknown, had paid the ultimate price. His bravery had saved the city from a terror of mythic proportions, but at the cost of his own life. The basilisk was no more. Its reign of terror ended in these forgotten tunnels. In the days that followed, I took it upon myself to ensure that the artifact and the story of the basilisk remained a secret. The world was not ready for such truths. I dedicated myself to studying the ancient relics, to understanding the mysteries that Oliver had touched upon. His sacrifice would not be in vain. I would continue his work, safeguarding the balance between our world and the shadows that lay just beyond. In the quiet halls of the university, amidst ancient texts and relics, I would carry on the legacy of Detective Oliver Blake, the last eyewitness to the terror of the basilisk.